He sealed the emergency exits himself, signed the order, and told anyone who complained to mind their own business. The money saved, $50,000, sat in the company account while his workers breathed smoke and prayed for a way out. When the fire finally came, the man who locked every door discovered something that changed everything. What does it feel like to be trapped inside a decision you can never take back? Everyone who worked at the Hartwell Processing Plant knew one thing about Gerald Hartwell. He built it, he owned it, and he never let you forget it. He had started with nothing but a rented warehouse and a belief that cutting costs was the same thing as being smart. 22 years later, the plant employed 63 workers, processed industrial chemical compounds, and made Gerald a wealthy man. He wore that wealth like armor. A pressed shirt every day, a silver watch on his left wrist, and a voice that filled every room he walked into. Workers learned quickly not to push back. Those who did rarely lasted long. The plant sat on the eastern edge of Ridgefield, a mid-sized industrial town where factory work was not a choice for most people. It was simply what you did. Families had worked there for years. Some had fathers and sons on the same shift. The money was steady. The hours were long, and the conditions were something you accepted or walked away from. Most people stayed. Gerald had been talking about the renovations for months. The eastern wing needed structural work, new wiring, and updated safety fittings. The full quote came in at just over $200,000. He approved the electrical work and the structural repairs. He drew a hard line at the fire safety upgrades. The emergency exit on the eastern wall required a new reinforced frame and updated hardware. The contractor quoted $50,000. Gerald rejected it the same afternoon. He ordered the door bolted shut with a steel bar and the external frame boarded over. He told his site manager it was temporary, a measure during active construction. It was never temporary. The board stayed. The bar stayed. Workers walked past that sealed door every single day, and not one of them knew that the green exit sign above it was pointing at a wall. 3 workers had filed internal complaints about blocked exit routes in the 14 months before the fire. Gerald received every complaint. He put them in a drawer and never responded. A state safety inspector visited the plant 8 months earlier and flagged the eastern exit as a concern. Gerald told him the door was under scheduled maintenance. The inspector noted it, accepted the answer, and left. Nothing changed. The drawer stayed shut. The exit stayed sealed. And Gerald kept running his plant the way he always had, certain that 22 years without a serious incident was proof that he knew better than anyone telling him otherwise. The fire started at 11:14 on a Thursday night in the chemical storage room at the back of the eastern wing. A faulty heating unit had been reported twice in the previous 6 weeks. Both reports went to Gerald. Neither was acted on. By the time the night shift workers smelled smoke, the storage room was fully involved. The flames climbed the wall and pushed into the ceiling above the processing floor. The air turned brown, then black. Workers moved without thinking, bent low, eyes streaming, moving toward the nearest exit. 7 workers reached the eastern door first. A line worker named Dennis Calloway hit the release bar and shoved. The door did not move. He hit it again, harder. The steel bar Gerald had ordered held from the inside. The boards on the exterior held from the outside. Behind them, the fire had reached the processing floor and found the chemical drums stored along the eastern wall. The temperature in the corridor spiked from uncomfortable to unbearable in under 90 seconds. Dennis later told investigators, "We all knew the door was close. We ran straight for it. It didn't open. It just didn't open." The group turned back and pushed north through the thickening smoke toward the main entrance. Gerald was in the plant that night, reviewing inventory records, something he did several times a month. When the alarm sounded, he was in his office on the eastern side of the building, less than 50 feet from the sealed door. He moved into the corridor, and the smoke hit him instantly. The chemical compounds burning in the storage room produced hydrogen chloride gas as they broke down, colorless, sharp, and immediately damaging to the airway. Gerald pulled his shirt over his face and moved toward the eastern exit because it was the closest point out of the building. He reached the door and pushed. He pushed again. The bar held. The frame didn't shift. He turned back into the corridor, and the route to the northern entrance was already gone, replaced by a solid wall of black smoke and heat. 14 workers escaped through the northern exit and through 2 windows that maintenance staff broke from the outside. Gerald Hartwell did not. Firefighters entered the building 9 minutes after the first emergency call. They found him face down on the floor of the eastern corridor, 12 feet from the sealed door, his silver watch still on his left wrist. The fire investigation ran 11 weeks. Investigators from the State Fire Marshal's Office and the Occupational Safety and Health Administration worked through the plant together, interviewing every surviving worker, weighing and rebuilding the sequence of decisions that had turned a faulty heating unit into a fatal trap. What they found was not complicated. It was just documented, one piece at a time, until the full picture sat in front of them and could not be explained away. The eastern exit had been sealed on Gerald Hartwell's direct order. There were emails, there were work orders. There was a payment record for the steel bar and the timber used to board the external frame. The safety inspector's visit was on file, including Gerald's maintenance claim, which investigators confirmed was never true and never followed up. The 3 internal complaints were recovered from the drawer in Gerald's office, 2 of them still in their original envelopes. Linda Marsh, and a line supervisor who had filed one of those complaints, told investigators, "I handed it to him myself. He looked right at me and said he would look into it." That was 13 months before the fire. OSHA issued findings of willful violation across 4 federal standards, including failure to maintain unobstructed emergency exit access, failure to respond to documented safety complaints, and failure to remove equipment in known disrepair from service. The faulty heating unit that started the fire had generated 2 written maintenance requests. Both sat unaddressed. The cost of the fire safety upgrade Gerald had rejected was $50,000. Medical costs for the 19 injured workers exceeded $600,000 in the first 3 months. Illegal claims filed by injured workers and their families climbed past $4 million within the first year. The plant, uninsured for willful safety violations under the terms of Gerald's own policy, was a total loss. Gerald Hartwell spent 22 years building something he believed only he could have built. His official cause of death was listed by the county medical examiner as acute toxic inhalation combined with thermal injury, consistent with extended exposure to hydrogen chloride gas produced by burning chemical compounds in an enclosed space with no accessible exit. He had not burned to death in the way the fire burned the eastern wall. He had been sealed in by his own hand, breathing air that became poison faster than his body could survive it. This case drew direct comparisons from fire safety advocates to the 1911 Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York, where locked exits killed 146 garment workers, and to the 2003 Station nightclub fire in Rhode Island, where blocked and inadequate exits turned a small stage fire into a tragedy that killed 100 people in under 90 seconds. In each case, investigators found the same thing. Someone had made a decision that prioritized something other than the people inside the building. And in each case, that decision had a name attached to it. The OSHA fine issued to Hartwell Processing totaled $280,000, reduced through the standard penalty adjustment process. 19 workers were injured. 1 man died. The fine worked out to roughly $14,000 per victim. And Dennis Calloway, the man who had thrown himself against the eastern door while the fire moved across the floor behind him, said this at the subsequent safety hearing: "I knew that door wasn't real. We all did. We just never thought we'd actually need it." Gerald Hartwell believed for 22 years that nothing would ever go wrong enough to prove him right. He was right about everything except the one night it mattered. The man who sealed the exits to save $50,000 spent his final minutes in a corridor. He had walked 1,000 times, 12 feet from a door. He had locked himself with nowhere left to go.